Good afternoon, I'm Shane Masters with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. The island has recorded a major increase in the number of positive cases of COVID-19 since the first case was detected in March last year. Data released from the Ministry of Health shows 263 new cases were recorded yesterday. 70 of the new cases are in the corporate area, 64 in St. Catherine, 46 in Manchester, 32 in Clarendon, 20 in St. Anne, and 12 in St. Elizabeth. All parishes except St. Mary recorded cases of the coronavirus. This has pushed the country's COVID case count to 16,513. Meanwhile, there were 2 additional deaths, pushing that figure to 357. They are a 78-year-old man from St. Mary and a 71-year-old man who lived in St. Catherine. 1 death is under investigation. Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says the country's healthcare system will have to provide support to individuals who get sick from taking the COVID-19 vaccine to be provided to Jamaica from AstraZeneca. The vaccines are expected to be rolled out starting later this month. Dr. Tufton has, however, indicated that the producers of a vaccine will not be held responsible if anyone has an adverse reaction when it is administered.
The drug companies working through the COVAX arrangement that the WHO, World Health Organization, has coordinated have said that the countries that are accessing the vaccines should sign an indemnity to essentially rid them of liability should anything happen. And that was the basis on which we would access the vaccine. This doesn't apply to Jamaica alone, Ms. Kitty, it applies to all the countries. Yeah.
Dr. Tufton said the indemnity was granted because of the emergency approval process the vaccine underwent. He, however, assures that the data show the vaccine is safe. Meanwhile, another public health expert is again assuring Jamaicans that the COVID-19 vaccine is safe. Head of the Caribbean Technical Advisor Group on Immunization, Professor Peter Figueroa, explained that the vaccine has gone through trials and have been passed. Professor Figueroa was one of the panelists on Thursday's virtual town hall hosted by the Ministry of Health. Jamaicans will begin getting the vaccine in a few days.
In the United States alone, over 33 million people have received the vaccine, and these vaccines are extremely safe and highly effective. When you look at the trials and you look at the persons who were vaccinated, there were virtually no persons admitted to hospital due to COVID among persons who were vaccinated. So this is a huge opportunity for us in Jamaica.
And Professor Figueroa says the current vaccines are working against the many variations of COVID-19 that seems to be coming up across the globe. He, however, noted that there could be cause for other vaccinations in the long run based on further mutations.
The virus that causes COVID does mutate, and therefore you get new variants, but it does not mutate as rapidly as the influenza virus. So with influenza, every year a new vaccine has to be developed for the seasonal influenza that is around. We do not anticipate that it would be as bad as that, but there is the possibility that a variant may develop and we'd have to have a new vaccine, a new coronavirus vaccine to deal with it.
In other stories now, members of the National Crime Consensus Monitoring Committee say funding is needed for the strategy to be effective. The views were shared on our current affairs program, All Angles, on Wednesday. Javon Keys reports.
It's a crime-fighting quest, a question of which strategy will work and how soon. The National Consensus on Crime is another addition to the list of proposed solutions signed on August 3, 2020. It brings together multi-stakeholder groups in a bid to tackle the crime epidemic. But why haven't the other solutions worked?
There's a direct link between corruption and governance in Jamaica, and we can't ignore the reality of that, you know, and part of fighting that is also looking at how we are actually addressing the problems. Or for example, are we prosecuting persons who are in authority who are actually involved in corruptions or any means of that nature? So there's a lot of things that we need to look at, and sometimes the difficulty comes from the fact that we are not actually doing some of the actual work that needs to be done in terms of legislation and actually prosecution.
Stakeholder collaboration has also been an issue, but the way forward is expected to be different, even though it would not be the first attempt at bringing multiple perspectives together to solve crime.
What we've not had is everybody coming together. So even the emancipation, in that Emancipation Declaration, again, don't recall all the details of it, but I'm pretty sure in the conversations we have had, it did not include the government agreeing, the opposition agreeing, the private sector, the trade unions, the youth groups, Everton is here, the churches, everybody coming together. And a significant difference here is, you know, as we built this consensus, we're very much focused on ridding ourselves of the individual views of what ought or ought not to be done.
But it's clear this strategy is not short-term.
We must acknowledge that this is a long-term project, and the mistakes that have been made in the past may not be mistakes because we didn't do the right thing. We may not have been sustaining what we were doing, either because of resource issues or because of political will issues or because there wasn't enough buy-in from the broader Jamaican society.
Some would argue that Jamaica has never been short of strategies on paper, but execution has been of concern. This consensus hopes to change that.
Our focus is on the impact in terms of ensuring that we have that downward trajectory, because I think as Rev indicated, it is not a silver bullet approach. It's going to take some time.
But all that comes down to funding.
As it is now, a plan. It has to be funded. Government has to put their money where their mouth is. Our job, I believe, is to hold, to use another cliche, hold their feet to the fire.
Javon Keys, TVJ News.
Residents of Clarendon are being advised to utilize the police force as it is there to serve them. The appeal comes from Mayor of Mapen, Winston Mirage, after two multi-million-dollar robberies in Clarendon's parish capital. Mr. Mirage said people traveling with a lot of cash should call the police to escort them.
The police have always been saying to us, if you intend to withdraw or travel with a certain amount of money, then you need to inform them so that they can be of an assistance to you. So, you know, I'm only sorry that this happened to this lady. Next time around, she should know that she should inform the police so she can get assistance to travel with those large sums of money. I just want everybody to be aware.
Business people from Mapen, in the meantime, are also being urged to sign up for the Jamaica Eye program and feed their video surveillance to the government's network, as this can help track criminals. Two men are to appear in the St. Mary Parish Court in Port Maria today, charged in connection with the theft of telephone cables belonging to telecoms firm Flow. 35-year-old Devon Days, taxi operator of Gully Road, St. Anne's Bay, and a 36-year-old Sheldon Kevin Leng, unemployed of Richards Pen, St. Mary, have been charged with simple larceny of cable wires, malicious destruction of property, and trespassing on the works of a telecommunications company. The police report that, acting on information, a team went to the Donald Land community on Monday afternoon, where the men were seen along the main road cutting the telephone cables. Burnt cables were found in a car nearby, as well as in a huge fire in bushes. The stolen cable amounted to 1,350 meters, valued at a little over $1.5 billion. That's rather $1 million. The theft of the cables has resulted in several businesses and residences now being without internet, fixed voice, and video cable services. The St. Mary police say there has been an upsurge of cable theft in communities such as Aleppo, where criminals went into the manholes and stole several sections of underground cable. The Hunts Bay police were forced to roll out contingency plans after 10 inmates tested positive for COVID-19, this prompting outrage for some relatives who turned up for visits on Wednesday. When these visitors turned up at the Hunts Bay Police Station in St. Andrew yesterday to deliver food for their relatives in the lockup, they were faced with the news no one was prepared to hear. No item was being allowed into the facility. That as 10 cases of COVID-19 were detected at the station and precautionary measures were taken to prevent further spread. When our news team arrived at the police station, we saw a group of women with several items they had brought for their relatives.
Look how it our. It's not easy, it's not pretty, we have to find something to carry this on. We'll give them plus a support for yard sale. So the least them could make is a phone call because they have every inmate loved one number in the phone book. And even if they don't have it, I'm sure every inmate in there at least I remember one of the family members telling me to call. So I think it was a sloppy job on their behalf. It was very, very sloppy. When I come with 2 tissue, them all want to turn back one. Good God have grace and mercy. And then I come back to the next level again. When I carry food, I'm going to plate big. When I carry 2 back, I want to the other one take one. Good God have grace.
Concerns were also raised about the well-being of the inmates. Head of the Corporate Communications Unit at the Jamaica Constabulary Force, JCF, Stephanie Lindsay, gave this assurance.
So I know that persons may have concerns that they're not able to take food and other personal things for the relatives in custody, but that is being taken care of by the police department. So there's adequate food, adequate item of clothing and sanitization, personal items for those prisoners in custody. So the system.
SSP Lindsay said that since the revelation, all the inmates and the police officers were tested for the virus, adding that swift action was taken to keep the matter under control.
We know that COVID, based on what we've heard, is very contagious, so we have to quickly move. So those that are tested positive already in isolation, and those that they came in contact with have been placed in quarantine. So there's a protocol that we have used to manage our prisoner population, and that protocol is in place.
O'Shane Masters, TVG. It's time for a break. More stories when we return. Welcome back. Continuing the news. The family of Kerry-Ann Collins, who was severely burned following an explosion at her home in December, is this afternoon calling on the government to invest more in the country's health sector to deal with burn victims. There are also calls for an audit to be done on apartment buildings in the corporate area by the Fire Brigade. Prince Moore reports.
Calls are mounting for the government to do more to deal with people who are victims of burns. It comes following the burning of Kerry-Ann Collins at her Palm Grove Housing Scheme home on Spanish Town Road in December last year. It's understood that Ms. Collins came home to her apartment at Palm Grove Housing Scheme one evening, and in the process of preparing a cup of soup, the gas stove exploded, setting her on fire. She was taken to the Kingston Public Hospital with life-threatening burns. The family says, based on the severity of her burns, they were told that she had to seek treatment overseas. But the cost was more than they could bear, which subsequently led to Ms. Collins' death. At the Thanksgiving service for her life, Ms. Collins' sister issued charges to a number of officials, chief among them Prime Minister Andrew Holness and Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton. Her call to the Prime Minister is for an audit to be done and funds be sourced for burn units.
We want a Prime Minister that goes beyond borders, one that is for all Jamaicans. I strongly believe it is time to put Jamaica first.
As for Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton, she is calling for the requisite resources to be provided to hospitals to deal with such cases.
My sister need not have died if the health system were better equipped.
In an interview with our news center in December, Dr. Tufton says a cost-benefit analysis has determined that it is not feasible to set up specialized burn units at public hospitals. He says all public hospitals are capable of treating burn victims, but not those requiring specialist care. The sister also issued a call for an audit to be carried out by the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation and the Jamaica Fire Brigade on apartment buildings in the corporate area. This, as she noted that a number of these buildings has only one entrance and exit and no fire escape. Prince Moore, TVJ News.
As the government moves to repair roads damaged by heavy rains last year, residents in one farming community are calling for attention to be placed on farm roads. Residents of Gordon Valley in St. Catherine told us they have been sidelined by the local authorities despite several appeals for the roads to be fixed. Kalisha Williams has that story.
The Rural Agricultural Development Authority, RADA, is responsible for repairing farm roads. Take this one in Gordon Valley, St. Catherine, for example. Residents told TVJ News that despite a boost in agricultural production in the area, the road in the community has been neglected.
From 1968, Mr. Roy McNeil cut this road when I was a little boy I go to school. And from then, it's just a hop road.
So farmers have had to make the trek down this terrain on a daily basis to access their farms.
We wrote requesting that Bottom Springfield, Gordon Valley, and Golden River roads be fixed. They did a part of Golden River, and that's it. And now, rumors that the money is diverted to other parts. We are not saying that these parts must not be fixed, but we need to know what is happening with these roads.
The government allocated $1 billion to fix the island's road network through the National Works Agency after Tropical Storm Zeta devastated the island in late 2020. While the residents understand that the NWA is not responsible for these roads, they believe more pressure should be placed on RADA to fix farm roads.
Not even donkeys can use the road, much less transportation. Because the persons you can't travel the roads. And these are populated areas too.
Councillor for the Above Rocks Division, which includes Gordon Valley, Neil Powell, told us he has been advocating for the Gordon Valley Road to be fixed. He said he was told that the road was approved for repairs some 2 years ago.
There's a new chairman, and of course I have got the chance to speak to the new chairman. He is not quite aware of what has been happening because he's new, so therefore, I am going to seek to have a discussion with him, further discussion, because I had one before. So therefore, to highlight him as to on what is happening, really taking place. But Monday, a number of persons came with the Member of Parliament in this area to show where work is supposed to be starting.
When we contacted the chairman of RADA, Andrew Simpson, he said investigations are being made to see if allocations were made to repair the road. Kalisha Williams, TVJ News.
A $50 million agricultural project is underway in New Pen, St. Mary. The project seeks to provide small farmers with secured land inputs, a set market at a set price, as well as help with the distribution of Irish potatoes.
During a tour of the Irish potato farms in New Pen, St. Mary on Wednesday, Agriculture Minister Floyd Green said the project will engage small farmers to expand their Irish potato production.
In the St. Mary belt, we do have a lot of arable land, and we want to put it into agricultural production. So we would have met with the farmers, we would have seen how they're doing. Clearly, we would have seen some of the challenges that they also have, because we're constantly looking at how can we better serve our farmers and how can we ensure that they can better raise their production numbers.
One such way is through road rehabilitation and water irrigation.
We've identified a well on the property that used to be in commission that's no longer operational, and I'm bringing in the National Irrigation Commission to look at the well to see if we can put it back into commission and also what sort of irrigation system we can roll out. We're also going to be looking at things like earth ponds to see if we can utilize that, especially in the short term, to help our farmers have access to water.
The project is an investment from Fresh and Direct Limited. As the company looks into storage capacity, the Agriculture Minister is calling on more private sector companies to invest.
And we believe that's a critical part that the private sector can play in moving agriculture forward. How can we invest more in storage so that when we have these massive yields, we don't go through times of glut and then times of shortage. So we believe that, this is a massive project which the Ministry of Agriculture tremendously supports.
Kodian Barrett, TVJ News.
News now in sports. Despite a late fight back from the West Indies bowlers, Bangladesh were in a healthy position at stumps on day 3 of the first test, reaching 47 for 3 in their second innings in Chattogram. They lead by 218 runs. Captain Monimol Haq, 31, and Mushfiqur Rahim, 10, were the batsmen at the crease at the close of play. Rakeem Cornwall has so far taken 2 for 28 and Shannon Gabriel 1 for 13. Earlier, the West Indies suffered a familiar batting collapse and were dismissed for 259 in their first innings reply after resuming on 75 for 2. Captain Craig Brathwaite carried on to 78 from his overnight 49, while Jamaica's Nkrumah Bonner failed to add to his overnight 17. Fellow Jamaican Jermaine Blackwood with 68 and Joshua Da Silva 42 put 99 for the 6th wicket before the Caribbean side lost 5 wickets for 6 runs to be bowled out. Mehidi Hassan Miraz took 4 for 58. And that's the Midday News. I'm Shane Masters. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, good afternoon.